What is happening, Internet? Kwing here, and today we're talking about The Flash, the movie, not the CW show, The Flash, starring Ezra Miller, Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jeremy Irons, Michael Shannon, and Sasha Kaye, and a bunch of other people. The Flash is a DC superhero movie, the last of, I would say, the Snyderverse, and it was actually a pretty good movie. I liked it. It's a shame that the movie doesn't really do anything afterwards. It doesn't really connect to a wider, we'll say, universe. It's just kind of a multiverse film. It's not a bad multiverse film, but it doesn't go anywhere. There's no real conclusion. There's kind of a gotcha thing at the end when Barry thinks everything is going to work itself out because of time travel, and no. And yeah, this is a time travel movie, which is becoming kind of a staple in Hollywood lately. There's a lot of either multiverse movies or a lot of movies with time travel. Indiana Jones movie coming out is going to deal with time travel, so it's just like maybe Hollywood needs to put the brakes on time travel just a little bit. Although I believe the Deadpool 3 movie coming out is also going to deal with time travel, plucking, Wolverine out of the past to have him come into the present or something like that. Anyway, we're talking about The Flash's time travel. This is based on the Flash comic book Flashpoint, but has nothing to do with Flashpoint. There's no evil Amazonians, there's no evil Atlanteans, there's no thin, lanky Superman, there's no Cyborg, there's no Shazam, and of course there's no Thomas Wayne Batman. So they took the idea of Flashpoint, and then they spun that idea on its head. The premise is still the same as the comic book. Barry runs back in time, prevents his mother's death, and then Armageddon happens. How one woman is able to be responsible for causing the end of the world, DC never really tells you. But that's what it is. The movie follows that to the T with adding some differences. Now, DC filmgoers have never actually gotten to see what the origin of was for The Flash, Barry Allen. What we saw of him was that he first appeared in, I believe, the BVS Ultimate Collection as an email, and we first saw him use his powers inside of like a Quickie Mart or something like that, and that was our introduction to young Barry Allen. So this movie, which Andy Muschietti, the director, was like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to see what would happen when Barry Allen got his powers? Like, how would he behave? What would he do? So they kind of give us both the Flashpoint movie and a Flash origin all in one, and you would think that the movie just doesn't work in that regard, but it actually does. Even though I found the other Barry Allen, the younger version, very, very annoying, and even at the end of the movie, I didn't really feel sad about what happened with younger Barry. But I'm not going to get into spoilers right now. I'm going to try to hold off some stuff as best I can, but I'm not very good at this, so I really like to, go all in with my thoughts and then see what happens after that. Anyway, so the premise of the movie is time travel based on the Flashpoint comic book, and Barry is given advice not to go back in time because it could destroy everything, which we saw from the trailers with Bruce Wayne and, of course, Barry Allen. So the movie opens up with a great team-up between Ben Affleck's Batman and the Flash. The Justice League has already been established in this universe, and it is not the 2017 Justice League. It is the Snyderverse. So anyway, the Justice League is around, and Alfred calls one of the only Justice Leaguers that he can get a hold of, which is the Flash. And the Flash even mentions he's kind of like the janitor of the Justice League, always doing a lot of cleanup missions and working with Batman because no one else will. Even though Batman is the leader of the League, Barry has to come in and help him the most because he is the only human member of the League. Some really crazy stuff goes down in Gotham, and Gotham Memorial Hospital has been destroyed by seismic disturbance generated by, I believe, the Falcone family somehow. They don't really go into it, but something happens and Flash has to get to Gotham General. Now, Flash is late for work, so he would like Alfred or anybody else to be able to go assist Batman. And Batman's like, sorry, I can't do that. I need you here now. And Barry's like, whoa, what about Superman? What's Superman doing? And we see the back of Henry Cavill's Superman on television dealing with a volcano crisis. And every other Justice Leaguer is busy. Aquaman, Cyborg, Wonder Woman. That just leaves the Flash to assist Batman. So the opening scene just basically has Barry helping Bruce out and catching babies at the hospital. So the Flash's powers, which this is kind of unique take. Andy Muschietti, or whatever his name is, the director, wanted to show that there's actually consequences to Flash using his powers. But don't worry, this feature is never ever used again in the movie. But they did show that the Flash needs food in order to power his metabolism and his superpowers. And when he's low on food, he starts to lose his powers. Now, that's a little bit different than in the comics, but let's go with it. In fact, he even has this really nice thing built into his suit that will never matter ever again that shows when he's full and when he's running low on food. So he saves the babies and does things a little bit different in the movie. For one, I've never known that the Flash can't touch people because it causes problems. So he uses inanimate objects to help save all these babies from the seismic explosion of the building. It was a cool opening sequence with the, title cards and stuff like that. It dragged on quite a bit, but the action that we got of Ben Affleck chasing bad guys in his motorcycle was pretty awesome. Comes out of the Flying Fox. I loved every minute of Ben on screen as Batman. He has cool gadgets in his bike. He was being very Batman. He didn't really talk very much, but it was Batman on screen. The only thing I couldn't stand is his costume is one of the worst that I've seen in the Snyder universe. And Ben has had some great Batman costumes, aside from the tiny ears, which always bothered me, but it was kind of a throwback to, the Adam West Batman and a little bit of Frank Miller's. But even Frank Miller's Batman had a little bit bigger ears. Anyway, so they do some stuff together, and they end up saving the day, and I can't really talk about one of the major spoilers that happens because it's in the beginning of the movie. But it was really great to see Jeremy Irons and Ben Affleck and Ezra all working well together, and I'm sad we're not really going to ever get to see that again. I'm not going to say we'll never see it because we live in a world where Michael Keaton came back after 30 years to play Batman, so I'm assuming Ben could come back for a special, we'll say ensemble movie, like a crisis movie or something in 5 or 10, 15 years. You never know. You can never say never anymore because it's possible to bring somebody like Michael Keaton back. It's possible to bring Ben and other people back later on, as long as, the story actually fits with them returning. So anyway, after Barry's done with his work with Batman, which only took, a little bit of time, he ends up back in his city and he's late for work. He meets his boss who's kind of rude to him. And, well, he's very obsessed with a certain case, which is the case involving his father, who was arrested wrongfully for the murder of his wife, which the Barry Allen story, and what you remember from the Zack Snyder stuff showing Barry and his dad. So Barry is super obsessed with this, and he's been working with Bruce to try to find any type of evidence to prove that his father did not commit that horrible crime and that he has an alibi. That's the whole, thing about the movie, is trying to prove that the father is not guilty so he can get out of prison and live the rest of his life with his son. It's a very heartfelt thing that Barry's trying to do, although he does it in kind of a twisted way. So while Barry's working on his case at home, again, he's super obsessed with this, he gets a call from Iron Heights prison, I believe, and talks with his dad. And he goes back to the home where they used to live in his Flash costume, and he's just in that neighborhood, kind of remembering old times. And his call with his dad ends abruptly. So Barry is kind of upset because, prisoners can't really talk very long on the phone. Barry's upset. He then goes speaks with his friend Bruce, who apparently they got really close over time, but we never got to see that, so we were robbed of that. And they have a heartfelt chat, and somehow they end up talking about time travel, how Barry could go back in time and save his mom, and he could go back in time and save Ben's parents. And while Ben appreciates that, he's like, you could also destroy everything, kind of like a butterfly effect. Like stepping on a blade of grass could literally change anything. And Barry's like, you know what? You're right, Bruce. I'm not going to do anything stupid like that. Then he meets up with Iris, and Iris and him aren't really together, but they may be dating, they may not. So they're chatting in his apartment. We get to see Barry do some of Flash's powers that we've never seen before, like he phases and steals some beer. He gets this crazy idea from Iris that if it was possible to time travel, it might not actually hurt anything. So there you go, folks. Pretty much, Iris is the catalyst responsible for Barry to disengage all those warnings he got from Batman not to time travel and what time travel could do to the world. And he does it anyway. At first, he just kind of messes around with it a little bit. He's not really trying to go too far back. And Iris was the one that gave him the idea that, well, maybe if you just changed one thing, it wouldn't necessarily change everything. So Barry has this idea, well, the tomato cans are all omnipotent, and they are the reason for everything. My mom needed the tomato can. My dad went to get the tomato can. And the surveillance footage showed that my dad was buying stuff, but he never looks up. So Barry has this idea, if my mom just has a tomato can to begin with, everything will be fine. And he's right. He puts the tomato can in his mom's bag, and she lives. And Barry gets to see that his life was actually connected with her. And then he gets all the way up to 2013, and something pushes him out of the Speed Force, trapping him in the year 2013, where Barry is, I believe, 18 years old. So Barry is very ecstatic to be home and to see what his life was like with his mom. And he's trying to rush back to the future, but he gets distracted by hanging out with his parents, both his mom and dad, living their lives, everything's cool. And then he sees himself, like his younger counterpart from 2013. And, of course, he has to go and meet up with himself, and then he explains, oh crap, today is the day that you have to get your superpowers. So like I was saying before, at the beginning of this review, it was very important for Andy, the director, to show how Flash got his powers, but maybe this wasn't really necessary, you know? I mean, usually in time travel, when you meet your counterpart from that time, it creates a paradox that literally can destroy the fabric of reality. So if you ever did time travel, in theory, you never want to meet up with yourself because it could be the end-all of everything. You know, if you time travel, be wary of yourself because you can't exist in the same space at the same time. That's what originally the laws of time travel was for fictional stuff. I don't know if that still applies after The Flash or not. Or, you know, across the Spider-Verse that has multiple versions of Spider-Man, like just running around, hanging out, and pointing at one another. The laws of time travel are unraveling as we speak. But, yeah, Barry has to help his younger self get his powers, but then there is a mishap with the powers. And there's no way I can't mention this. So Barry's younger self gets the powers, recreates the experiment that happened, and then he loses, like Barry from the Snyderverse, loses his powers. So older Barry. Barry from 2022 or 2023. And Barry's like, okay, I need to teach you how to use your superpowers and all this other stuff. And then he's like, oh crap, now Zod's here. So more or less it's like this. You know how in the Flashpoint comic a lot of bad stuff continued to happen to Barry after he was in this, quote, utopian world? That's the same thing that happens to both Barrys. So after kind of teaching the new Flash how to use his powers, then Zod arrives and time flows the way that it's supposed to. Like, you remember Man of Steel, everything happened, except fate changes for certain things because Superman doesn't meet up with the U.S. government. Then Zod starts terraforming the Earth much sooner, and there's a whole lot more problems happening. So basically, Barrys have to go meet with Bruce because they found that Bruce Wayne exists in this world. None of the other metahumans exist. Aquaman was never born. Diana never left Themyscira. Probably doesn't exist. Who knows? Superman never arrived on Earth. There's no mention of him anywhere. Cyborg was never created. And no mention of aliens. So there is talk about Batman. And because of that, the Barrys go to Gotham, where we finally meet Michael Keaton. Now, Michael Keaton's performance was perfect. I was not disappointed in anything that Michael Keaton brought to the table, both as Bruce Wayne and Batman. As a person who grew up with Keaton's Batman, it couldn't have been any better than that. So, diehard Keaton fan, very, very happy for the amount of time that Keaton was in the movie, how he contributed to the film, the action, the heartfelt convos with Barry. Very well done. And Keaton he brought his A game right off the bat, as opposed to things that I've heard about his Batgirl performance where he was just kind of there for a paycheck, and the script wasn't very kind to him in that regard. He was Bruce Wayne and Batman in that movie, but this was very faithful to his 89 Batman, down to so many things that would take an entire video to talk about. His personality, his mannerisms, how he moves, how he shows a human side to his Batman, and also how he kind of, I wouldn't say jokes with the audience, but the audience can kind of understand what that Batman is doing. And it would be spoilers to talk about it, so we'll hold back on that. So the Barrys meet Bruce and future Barry or Snyderverse Barry. We'll just say Snyderverse Barry. Snyderverse Barry gets the snot beat out of him because he doesn't have his powers, and his younger self is able to beat Keaton because he has powers. And Keaton afterwards is just kind of like, okay, well, let's just, eat some food, and then I'll send you guys on your way. So Snyderverse Barry gets to talking with older Bruce Wayne, who's not his Batman. It's a different Batman. And somehow they come up to this conversation about the multiverse. And Keaton explains to the young Barry that he has a completely wrong idea of what time travel is. He's thinking that time travel kind of branches out and creates, different realities from, a fixed point in time, which, of course, would be something like Back to the Future or something like that. What Keaton then says is actually pretty smart for his Batman. He takes the spaghetti and he dumps it on the plate, and he says, instead of, branching timelines, you have spaghetti. You have so many different aspects of the multiverse with so many possibilities springing up, and then he put the tomato sauce and everything, and he says, what you get with time is this, a mess of spaghetti. And Barry then realizes, hey, maybe I shouldn't have time traveled because I just kind of screwed the pooch on everything. And younger Barry just has no idea what's going on. He's just so excited to meet his hero, Batman. But of course, when Snyderverse Barry says, hey, well, will you help us? Just like in the trailers, Batman says pass, although they did a poor editing job, so it looks like he says okay, but no, he just doesn't want anything to do with that. Gotham is literally a utopia. There's no reason for Batman anymore, and he really doesn't want to help find a Superman or a Justice League to fight Zod. He doesn't care, So the other Barrys end up going into the Batcave and cause all kinds of shenanigans. They get into a fight, a verbal thing, kind of more like two brothers. They feel like they're older brother, younger brother. And I thought that Ezra handled that dynamic between two versions of himself very well. It wasn't disjointing, and over time it was kind of like, all right, the actor is actually playing two versions of Barry, and it works. Multiverse Barry, Snyderverse Barry. Keaton overhears what's going on with Barry and talks to him a little bit, and they come to an agreement, kind of, and Keaton doesn't really get to show off his detective abilities, but he helps out the Snyderverse Barry, and they decide, okay, I'm going to help you guys out once, get your Superman, and then I'm done. Whatever you guys do after that, not my problem. So they all decide to go to Russia. And this was probably my favorite part of the movie. Mainly because Keaton just owns everybody. Barry does some crazy stuff, younger Barry, and doesn't really use the power very well. So it falls on Michael Keaton to save the day, and it's well worth it. I don't want to spoil it. All I'll say is Ben Affleck was the Arkham skin of Frank Miller in The Warehouse. Michael Keaton is the Batman Arkham Knight 89 skin in the Russian silo. My gosh, I know it was CGI and it was stunt double stuff, but it made Keaton's Batman look so cool. Is it better than the Warehouse sequence? No. But it was really good. Like I said, it feels like Ben and Keaton are both skins for the Arkham Batman at this point. And one of these days I'm going to talk about it in detail because it warrants a video. It really does. Another thing that warrants a video that I would really like to talk about is the bat suits that were shown in the movie. That shows that Keaton's been active for years. They had some Kenner action figures reminiscent to when I was a kid. They showed the Neil Adams Batman suit. They showed a rendition of Batman using guns. There was a lot of cool things to unpack. Plus, the 89 and Return suit were in the Batcave as well. So that was a nice Easter egg. Along with another spoiler that maybe I'll talk about at the end. So long story short, Keaton cleans up and is awesome in the Russian silo, and they end up finding the Superman that they're looking for. Although, like you guys know from the trailer, it's not Superman, it's Kara. Kara's not too thrilled because she's Flashpoint Superman who's been locked away and, messed with by the Russians. So she's been stuck in a Red Sun prison for probably 20 years or longer. Who knows? She's been in there a long time. She's not been a solar-powered alien soaking up the sun's rays. And she's in no condition to fight Zod. Also, she gets very, very emotional a lot in the movie. So the two idiots and Batman manage to save Supergirl. And as they're leaving, then basically Kara kicks butt and kind of trusts them, and they go back to Gotham, where Zod is basically getting ready to destroy everything. Now, one thing that I think is different than the Snyderverse is I believe Gotham and Metropolis are in different parts of the U.S., whereas in the Snyderverse, I have no idea why Zack did this, and I never liked this, but he made Gotham and Metropolis sister cities. Whereas before, both in the comics and the animated series, Gotham was technically New Jersey, and Metropolis was technically Chicago. And you actually had to get on a plane to go to where Metropolis was. It was quite a ways, Bruce Wayne showed up on a jet, and in the Snyderverse, they were sister cities. It would be like the difference between New York City and Newark. They're like really close, and I never liked that, because when Batman and Superman have some distance, it's a little bit better. So I liked how they showed Gotham City as kind of, away. I would have liked to see more of Gotham's architecture. You really don't get to see that at all, just from like faraway shots when the Batwing is flying over stuff. But yeah, that would have been nice. So pretty much just like Keaton, when they approach Supergirl and they say, hey, do you want to work with us? She says no and flies away. And it's like, wait a second, isn't this exactly what Keaton did earlier, where they asked for help and then Keaton was like, no. So Kara's mirroring the same thing that we already saw. But she sees the atrocities that Zod commits, and then she's ready to be Team Kara. So just like following the beats of the Flashpoint comic, the next part of the story is Barry has to get his powers back. And remember, in the comic book, he works with Thomas Wayne to recreate the accident that created him. So they show that, and it more or less works out the same way as the comics, except it's a little bit different. The scene kind of drags on, but I don't like how Keaton does some stuff in this. Like, he seems to get kind of close to Barry, but then he has no problem electrocuting Barry. So, I mean, that's Keaton's Batman, though. Like, he's just kind of weird, You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. That kind of stuff. He's a character. So, yeah, they followed the beats from Flashpoint, from the time travel to Barry losing his powers, and then Barry getting his powers back. And then, of course, you have the big endgame moment, which is, of course, the few Justice League members, which would be two Flashes, Supergirl, and Batman, versus Zod and Kryptonians who are becoming superpowered, and they have world engines getting ready to destroy the Earth. Well, this is where the movie, to me, I wanted to really like this stuff, but the big climactic battle at the end was okay. Like, the bad CGI was pretty apparent. It looked like a PS3 game, like a really detailed PS3 game, but the CGI at some parts just was very, we'll say, kind of took me out of the movie a little bit, and I was like, okay, I'm watching CGI. None of this is possible. Batman in his Batwing was awesome, like, in the fight sequence. Like, to see him go all Top Gun was great. And then to see him get out of the cockpit and fight some Kryptonians was cool, too. And how he went about fighting them was pretty ingenious, considering he had no prep time. So I did like that. The Zod and Kara fight, I have some questions that maybe people remember this, because I'm not a big Man of Steel person. But this is going to get kind of into spoiler territory, so I'm just going to, gonna have to talk about it. So, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie or don't care. Zod pretty much kills Supergirl and Batman. And the Barrys are seriously freaked out by it. But how Zod is able to kill Supergirl, the first time it was cool. It was kind of like, oh, okay, well, if he had that Baraka blade on his arm and could, pull this out and stab Kryptonians like it was nothing, just like he did to Jor-El in Man of Steel, why didn't he stab Henry Cavill's Superman? If that blade is able to pierce Kryptonian, physiology, why didn't he use it? And this is a problem I have is it creates inconsistencies with other DCEU movies. Like if Zod was capable of just stabbing Superman, then the fight would be over, and that's pretty much exactly what happens. Zod gets his butt beat down by Supergirl, and then he cheats and basically fatalities her by impaling her with this hidden blade thing, like Assassin's Creed or something. And the first time I saw it, I was like, whoa, I did not see that coming. But the problem was, every time he killed Supergirl when they rewound time, it was always with that blade. So you would think, like, since maybe Supergirl had a rough idea of time being changed, that she maybe could have predicted that blade was going to stab her over and over again in so many different ways. And if they actually would have broken Zod's blade, then maybe Supergirl would have won the fight. That's what I was thinking. It was like the Barrys are talking about how it's a fixed point in time and they can't save Batman and Supergirl. It's like the one thing that keeps killing Supergirl is the bladed weapon. Especially with the bad CGI that they're showing all around. It's that blasted bladed weapon. It's just like break that and then maybe Supergirl will be okay. Maybe it won't be a fixed point. But nobody thinks to do that. Just like in the entire battle, I know I'm nitpicking, I'm sorry. In the entire battle with the Flashes, in the first arc, they make note that Snyderverse Barry has to eat and consume a lot of food in order to use his superpowers. But here they are, like, using all these S-tier Flash superpowers from cyclones to lightning, you name it, and not once are they running out of power. And they're literally taking on a Kryptonian army. And that entire gimmick at the beginning of the movie, like, oh man, I need to really watch my calorie intake, or I'm going to die, it's never brought up again. And sometimes it just really makes me think that these writers of superhero movies have like this dartboard in their office. And they're just throwing darts at the board for story ideas. And then they completely gloss over an important story idea. I think it would have been interesting to see that once Flash had his powers back, that there might be some stakes involved with how long they can use their powers. Like, it would make sense if, oh my gosh, we can't save Batman and Supergirl because we just don't have enough power to fight all these Kryptonians and to catch up to our friends. But you never feel the stakes involved. It's just like, they're just not fast enough to make it to both Keaton and Supergirl. And that was off-putting for me. Like, I don't know if anybody has said that online yet, but that's how I feel. I feel that both the Baraka Blade and, just completely forgetting that Flash has that calorie thing in his suit. I really wanted to see that thing beeping off when he was using all these amazing Flash powers, which was great to see. The CGI for that stuff was peak. But it's just like the battle in general, like fighting people and running around. Sometimes it didn't look CW quality. It looked video game quality. And not like S-tier video game quality either. Keaton's death scene it brought a tear to my eye. Like, if Batman was going to go out, I like the two ways he died. The first way he died was stupid. The second way he died made sense. He got killed by a Kryptonian. Of course. That would happen, I'm not going to say how he dies, but he goes down fighting. It's really good. He gets some last words with his friend Barry, and he's also aware that Barry changed time so that Batman could try again. It still hurt to see Keaton die, but it was awesome to see him come back and fight. And there's really not much you can do up against a Kryptonian. If he was fighting like a human, bad guy from the DC universe, like a supervillain, then maybe there'd be ways to prevent his death. There's no knowledge in this world of how to deal with Kryptonian DNA. There's no countermeasures. There's no weapons. So Batman was very creative, and it was cool to see. But also it was sad. Anyway, so we're going to continue talking about pretty much Barry comes to the conclusion that they can't save their friends. And even though younger Barry is running back in time, each time getting more and more damaged, older Barry's like, there's nothing we can do. In fact, I'm just going to tell you outright, we have to let Mom die or the world is doomed. Like, literally billions of people will die. And then, this is probably the biggest spoiler, but also it's stupid. So, Ezra Miller plays 3 versions of Barry Allen. He plays Snyderverse Barry, plays younger Barry from 2013, and then the main villain of the movie, future Barry, who they just call Dark Flash, I think. And you find out that this one Flash has been around for, who knows, hundreds of years trying to change this fixed point in time by himself. And his master plan was to get two Flashes to join him on his crazy crusade to save his friends, Batman and Supergirl, who he didn't really know that long. You know, he's obsessed with saving them, that becomes his entire life, and he's kind of created this, like, prison for himself, to the point where literally them trying to alter this canon event, insert, Spider-Verse thing there, that the multiverse is literally slamming into each other and unraveling. And this was where a lot of the budget for the movie went. And also, it doesn't look as good as I thought it was going to. The coolest thing about the multiverse thing that we got to see is it established the multiverse just like the CW. And we finally got to see some of our favorite heroes again. Adam West was involved, sort of, with archived footage and new CGI footage for both Supergirl from the 80s and Christopher Reeve's Superman were in it, as well as a really awesome sequence from the Superman Lives movie starring Nicolas Cage with his freaky-looking Superman in a CGI thing that actually looked really good. But then, of course, Nicolas Cage Superman died anyway when he collided with, I think, Christopher Reeve's Superman's world, or maybe Adam West. It doesn't matter. And we're seeing all these different multiverses colliding into one. And my biggest problem with the sequence is everything was in yellow and red, aside from, maybe some quick shots of these very expensive CGI cameos. And in fact, I don't even think that was really Nicolas Cage. I think that was Nicolas Cage CGI, which still looked pretty awesome. It looked better than some of the other CGI that was in the movie, but it was still kind of like, really? You're going to do this? Okay. Yeah, I know a lot of people were raving about, oh my gosh, the CGI in this scene looks so good. No, it doesn't. So, long story short, after the whole multiverse starts falling apart around Barry, older Barry realizes, wait a second, this future Barry from the Snyderverse isn't really going to play ball, so I need to kill him. And I would say that future evil Barry is actually very strong. So the fact that he's not fast enough to change fate, that's kind of silly, because he's easily able to mop the floor with Snyderverse Barry. And he's getting ready to kill him when younger Barry steps in and takes the fatal blow, erasing future Barry from existence, and of course killing himself. And then Barry has to watch himself die twice, which that's going to do a number on his psyche. And then he has to go and kill his mom by messing with the omnipotent tomato can. And that's essentially what he does. But then it's like Barry doesn't learn from his soul-crushing experience that tomato cans can destroy multiverses, so he just can't help, not learning his lesson. And I understand why he did this, the evidence was his father never looked up when buying the tomato cans, and he has no alibi, so he's forever going to be in jail for the murder of his wife. So I understand on a human level why Barry does this, but the other Barry from the Flashpoint comics actually learns the consequences for time travel and doesn't meddle in it ever again. Snyderverse Barry is just like, you know what, I don't care, screw fate, I'm messing with this tomato can, and he walks up and he puts the tomato can on a top shelf where his dad is going to have to lift his hat and look up at the camera, and Barry's like, gotcha, universe, I totally did this, and there's going to be no repercussions for this because I did it right. My mom still died, the universe is saved, and I'm going to see my best friend Bruce after my dad is acquitted. Barry runs into Iris, obviously they become an item, and then Bruce Wayne shows up, and then what they should have done, especially if they were going to tie the Flash into the new James Gunn's universe, with Chapter 1, DC Gods and Monsters, which will not have both Aquaman and the Flash as part of the first chapter. What they could have done is they could have alluded to that it was a new Batman without showing the actor's face. Because then you could be like, wait a second, judging from Ezra's reaction, dropping an F-bomb, who are who the bleep are you? And then they could just leave it like that and go like to black. And then just leave it at that. Leave it with Flash's reaction like, I'm not back in my Earth. But no, instead of teasing the possibility of a new Batman for James Gunn's Batman Brave and the Bold movie, you show who the Batman actor is, and it's George Clooney. And I knew this was going to happen. We made a video. I talked about it, months in advance. But it still hurt. And the fact that George didn't even shave, how can you have bearded Batman running around the streets of Gotham unless his Batsuit has like a Jean Paul Valley mask over it to hide his beard and stubble? It's like George couldn't just shave his face. Every other Batman in the movie, Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton, they shaved. In fact, Michael Keaton had a thick beard when he first meets the Barrys. And then when he puts on the Batman suit, he shaved. So if they just worked together a few nights ago, there was no way that a thick bearded George Clooney could have been the Batman in that universe. And I know this creates all kinds of nitpicking problems, but that really just took me out of the moment. It's like, oh, it's just George Clooney cameoing as George Clooney. Got it. It's not Bruce Wayne. It's George Clooney pretending to be Bruce Wayne. And it's like, the man he could have shaved. It would have taken even if he had like a rough stubble, it would have been better than like a full Santa beard. It was like, But that, of course, wasn't the end of the movie. The end of the movie, they had to ruin Aquaman and the Flash. And, they were talking about some of Batman's crazy shenanigans. But basically, the George Clooney thing at the end was to alert the audience that Barry is not back in the Snyderverse. And he's not in James Gunn's universe either. The Flash is somewhere in a new world that he helped create that has similarities and tones to what the universe was, but it's completely different. Now we're going to get into even more spoilers. Wonder Woman is in this movie, and she is fantastic. She's at the very beginning and saves Batman when he makes a small error. And let me just paint the picture for you. So Batman is caught up to Carmine Falcone's son, Alberto, who has this deadly contagion virus. And the warning was that this virus cannot fall in the Gotham River or it's going to kill everybody in Gotham. So Batman is very adamant about getting this virus under control. And he does some awesome things, chasing after Alberto on his bike, using all kinds of amazing gadgets, from a shield to protect from bullets that comes up. He has a thing to, when two cars crash into each other, he presses a button, and this saw comes out that cuts through cars. And the cars didn't explode, which would have been awesome to see. He cuts through the cars, and then he just kind of cut through the back of the cars and just drove right through them. And then he does some awesome fight sequence where he back grapples onto the back of the car, and that's when you see the surfing aspect, when he's kind of surfing on the highway with the back grapple. And he goes in and he has a quick fight sequence. Doesn't last very long. In fact, the last guy who's driving the vehicle, he sees Batman, and Batman just kind of looks at him, and the guy punches himself and jumps out the car. And it was kind of a Looney Tunes thing, but also, that would totally happen with Batman. The villain would either, know that he's going to get his butt kicked by Batman, or he can toss himself out of the car and see, what life throws at him. Is he going to survive either encounter? Doesn't matter. It's not worse than getting pounded on by Batman. And then Batman is stuck in this car with Alberto Falcone, and they're veering off the edge toward the Gotham River. And at the last second, when Batman, it looks like he is going to die along with this mob person, there's a lasso that comes out of nowhere, and it grabs both of them up. And then we have this cute moment between Wonder Woman and Batman. So Andy threw in a Wonder Bat moment from the Snyderverse, which was sweet. It kind of went a little cheesy because Batman and Falcone had the lasso wrapped around their arm, and then Batman was talking about the truth and all kinds of similar stuff that we saw with when Aquaman sat on the lasso of truth and Josh Whedon's thing, but it wasn't as stupid. It was within character of Ben Affleck's Batman, so it was funny because you knew that he was desperately trying not to tell Diana the truth, as well as he was grinning like an idiot in front of her, and she kind of winked back at him. So there was definitely some romantic tension between the two characters. It's very brief, but it was great, and it's a shame that we're never going to see that again. The other spoilery stuff I can talk about is how the movie was originally supposed to end. So as you know, Both Michael Keaton and Supergirl die in the movie. Very sad. But it wasn't going to be the end of their characters. In fact, there were several different endings that were going to happen, according to test screenings from friends of mine that saw the movie a couple years ago. The first ending involved Michael Keaton and Supergirl showing up and talking to Barry at the courthouse. In fact, there are still images floating around that I dare not show you, where Michael Keaton is wearing Ben Affleck's blue suit. He's standing in front of the car that Ben Affleck drove away in at the first arc of The Flash, and he's outside the courthouse, clean-shaven, as that world's Batman. And, of course, he was going to go on to be Batman, appearing in the Aquaman movie, where he filmed cameos and had an important role in the movie. And then he appeared in Batgirl, where he was going to, he was going to be in Batgirl. He's going to have about 10, 15 minutes in the movie, and it wasn't going to be very good. And then he was going to show up in Blue Beetle and some other projects. He was basically going to become the Nick Fury of the DC Universe. And Supergirl was there to show that there is a Kryptonian on that world, and it's Supergirl, because Superman doesn't exist anymore. And people hated that ending. A lot of people were like, okay, this is a new universe, but they didn't like that ending. So they were like, okay, so we're going to do a different ending. So the next ending that they did was they shot Michael Keaton and Sasha again, but then Henry Cavill's Superman shows up as Superman. So this was filmed in September of 2022, I believe, or August of 2022. And Gal Gadot was there too. So you had Gal Gadot in the Wonder Woman costume, you had Henry Cavill as Superman, and you had Sasha as Supergirl, like in costume, and then Michael Keaton shows up as the Bruce Wayne of that universe, as the Gotcha at the end, and he's wearing the blue suit. So the ending pretty much stayed the same, it just incorporated Henry Cavill, and it incorporated Gal Gadot. And the only difference to Barry, which was going to be the big, wait a second, you're not Batman. And then Michael Keaton would have said, I'm Batman. So, just nostalgia. And then the movie ended with another tease where Ben Affleck was going to show up on Barry's computer saying, come find me, Barry, I'm lost in the multiverse, which would have tied into the Crisis on Infinite Earths or the Final Crisis movie, which would have had Darkseid as a villain. And that was Walter Hamada's plan. Originally was always at the end of having Michael Keaton and Supergirl to show that they were alive in this new universe. They were still going to tease that Ben Affleck's Batman was missing in the multiverse, and that was always the ending. And now, of course, they changed the post-credit scene to have Aquaman and Barry, showing that, those actors are probably going to be the only ones that are going to be around from the original universe. But, of course, my theory is that the original universe is not going to be the universe of James Gunn. All James Gunn did with this new ending where he had George Clooney come in as a favor is it showed that the multiverse exists and the Flash is somewhere in it. So the whole point of the Flash was not necessarily to erase the Snyder Cut or to do any of that stuff. It was to prove that the multiverse in the DC Universe exists, it's alive, and it's thriving somewhere. And maybe, if you watch enough movies, you'll see some characters again interact. So they don't even have to completely wipe the world clean. Basically, DCU takes place in a completely different universe, a new universe that's part of the DC multiverse that the Flash kind of creates in the Flash movie. Now, because reception for the film is not very good, it's been a week since the film actually came out, and it hasn't even made $100 million yet at the box office. In fact, projections for the film are not good. I may be watching the box office for this, but it's not looking good at all. This could be one of the biggest DC bombs at the box office since Shazam, Fury of Gods, and Black Adam. Even the Suicide Squad, like James Gunn's version, did a little bit better at the box office than The Flash is. But I'm hoping that Michael Keaton's star power and some other things will be enough to pull the movie to victory, because it's actually a good movie. Yes, it stars a controversial actor, Ezra Miller, who did a lot of stupid stuff, worthy of being in jail. And that's definitely going to weigh on the conscious mind of a lot of people because, well, it's all the media has been talking about for 2 to 3 years since the film has been in development. Michael Keaton is not, from what I hear, going to have a very big press tour about the movie. In fact, he didn't even show up for the red carpet for the film. Ben Affleck and J-Lo did, and J-Lo's not even the movie. But yeah, they just don't really seem like they're marketing the movie, almost like James Gunn knows this is going to be a bomb and just putting all his efforts into something else. But yeah, I mean, I like the movie. I would put it pretty high in my tier list. Probably have it like number 5 or 6 for the top 10 DC EU films. I'd have to really think about its placement, but it would either be number 5 or number 6. It was a really well-made movie. Michael Keaton was astounding in it. Ezra annoyed me sometimes, but Supergirl was fantastic. Michael Shannon was okay. Kind of felt like he really didn't understand why he was in the movie. And some of the other Kryptonians that just showed up feel like they had more character development in Man of Steel than they did in The Flash. But yeah, I'm still sticking with my original argument that the whole point of the movie was just to establish that the multiverse exists in the DC universe, and we'll see more epic adventures from DC in the multiverse in the future. But you won't necessarily see the characters that you saw in The Flash. They can easily be, their stories can be done, or their stories can continue in comics or animated movies. Who knows? But that all depends on reception, too. If The Flash bombs, I don't think you'll ever see Ezra as the Flash or Michael Keaton as Batman again. Then again, maybe you will see Keaton as Batman. Who knows? I think that as long as he's up for it, he could maybe do Batman Beyond or something like that. But I've heard the Batman Beyond movie was scrapped even after the Walter Hamada guy left. But yeah, anyway, that's it for my review of The Flash. Thanks so much for watching, guys and gals. Got kind of long, but I did both spoiler and non-spoiler and synopsis and stuff like that. But I don't know if I'm going to see the movie a second time. I might wait until it comes out on Blu-ray, and I'll totally pick it up on Blu-ray. I collected the Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck figures because, I think those are going to go up in value. And also, I really like to collect the figurines for Batman and Superman, when the movies come out. Before scalpers jack up the price of those things too. They're really nice McFarlane figures. But yeah, that's it. That's all, people. Thanks so much for watching my review of The Flash, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. All right, people. So keep it locked here for more news on Batman in video game, TV, movies, and occasionally comics when they don't suck. Later, Gothamites.